everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland Retrospective here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guests and I each pick a film related in some shape or form. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you have two movies to go check out. And joining me is our fearless leader of the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network, Mike Hilty. Thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to be on with you as always.
It is indeed that second Thursday of the month, and it's time for us to do a double dose of some Humphrey Bogart.
Mhm.
And we got The Treasure of Sierra Madre and The Maltese Falcon, also both directed by John Huston. So
Ooh.
double dipping in terms of our connection between these two films. But let's start with this 1948 Western. This is a two down on their luck Americans searching for work in 1920s Mexico convince an old prospector to help them mine for gold in the Sierra Madre Mountains. This is indeed starring Humphrey Bogart, Walter Huston, and Tim Holt. And Mike, what are your general thoughts on the film?
So I cannot recall if I've ever seen this movie.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that kind of drew me to this is that I was looking for a fun adventure movie that has to do with treasure hunting, and that is not at all what I got. And you
No.
know what? I'm okay with it because the exploration of greed and the way that it just takes hold of people, I was not expecting that, and I
Mhm.
think I appreciated what the movie was trying to tell me even more than just a turn your head off adventure movie about gold. It's a little dated when it comes to stereotyping Mexicans and Hispanic people, but
Is it dated, Mike? Because movies are still doing that now, Amelia Perez.
oh,
But
oh, that's so weird. Yeah, it's glad to see some things don't change. But Humphrey Bogart is great in this. You kind of just get the vibe right off the bat that Dobbs is just kind of a not great guy from the very start of the movie because he's just like panhandling on the streets of this town. Just even like goes back and like accidentally panhandles to the same guy. And he's just like,
yes,
dude, leave me alone.
who
So,
is John Huston,
well, there you go.
the
Um,
director in his first ever on-screen role, which is very interesting.
Made the most of it then. But I so just the story of just these three guys coming from very different backgrounds, very different just different walks of life, and also
Mhm.
just different philosophies on what to do with this gold that they
Yep.
get as well. All the credit to Walter that Houston or Huston,
Walter Huston, who,
Walter Houston, who's the prospector, and man, he goes for it, and I love that.
yeah, because let me double check here. I think that's John Huston's father,
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken. Wait, father, brother. I'm gonna go double check that. But I think one of the things that's so impactful about this film is its very deep rooted themes about greed. Because that permeates throughout the whole entire film. And yes, he is John Huston's father.
okay.
So John Huston got to direct his father in a movie.
Hey,
That's what I thought, because he is a generation older. But the way that this film deals with greed and sees exactly how it affects each of these characters, because Dobbs goes full blown, like out there, just completely obsessed, filled with paranoia. And it's very interesting seeing that. And then also seeing somebody like Howard, Houston's character, even up to the very end with that laugh, which just hits. And it's so important because Howard and Dobbs are the opposites in this situation in terms of like what you should really be doing with your life. And Dobbs really comes down to like this greed. I must get this money. I must have this. And Houston's just like, I'm gonna go out to this like Mexican village and just live here. That's my time. And that kind of experience. And John Huston directs the hell out of this. It has energy, it has like the technical prowess, it's engaging, it's thrilling, it keeps you on the edge of your seat. And Humphrey Bogart plays Dobbs so perfectly with that like has that like grit and dirt to him, and especially as he becomes more malevolent into this whole situation, it becomes dangerous and you really feel that danger. And
Mhm.
yes, the it's very stereotypical representation of Mexico, but also extremely iconic line
Badges?
dialogue.
Badges? We
Badges?
we don't need no stinking badges. Yeah.
And that's where this comes from. And then they spoofed it in Blazing Saddles, and then in plenty of other places for sure. But it's always those moments where it's like you're watching like this classic and you're like, oh my god, that's where this comes
That's
from.
where this comes from. Yeah, that is what I love about movies like this. I don't like, and it's interesting because although it kind of hits you on the head a little hard on the theme of like, hey, there's real treasure out there that isn't gold, but this whole thing with the character of Cody, he like comes in like super late into the movie
Hmm.
and he tries to, three ways to get in on this plan with these three guys. Like you either bump me, just like, dude, stop saying bump me. That's a weird way to say that you're just gonna kill somebody, but that's fine.
Hmm.
You just let him go or you cut him in. And obviously they try everything that they can not to cut him in, and he doesn't make it through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the letter that he gets from or that he has from his widow, a bit on the nose, but that
Hmm.
doesn't change the fact that it still has an effective message right there about, hey, I understand that you're looking for gold and you're trying to do something with your life, but you've got treasure back here and just get home soon.
Hmm.
Like, wow, that's a great way to put that, and in stark contrast to what Dobbs has been telling us this entire movie.
It's so interesting because like Howard the character is such an interesting person, and Walter Houston's performance is so great. Like you just really connect with him, you empathize with him, you understand him. You see that deep down he's a good person who's getting
Mhm.
caught up in this whole entire thing and he's not about it. And like his dynamic with Dobbs is so has so much friction, and then like the way you see how Curtin and Dobbs like that situation, how that escalates, and all the way up to like there's some shocking violence here and things that you would not expect to happen, and then also some twists where it's just
Mhm.
like which certainly takes Dobbs by surprise.
Oh yes, very much so.
Very much so. And like this film is just this beautifully shot film and there's a lot of grit to it. This is one of those westerns that I don't think enough people talk about, or
No.
like even I don't even know if they acknowledge it as a western, to be honest. Like it's on the cusp of being a neo-western because like it's still the 1920s. I think the Mexico setting certainly lends itself more to like this idea of this being a western more traditionally, but most of the time like traditional westerns are before the turn of the century. But this really is a great example of this genre, and it's a tragic story. Not
It's very
everybody's going to make it out of this situation, and sometimes greed will get you like that.
Yep, very much so. And I think one thing that I appreciated about this movie as well, the music. Music is great in
Yep.
this. Lots of great tracks on here. The score's fantastic, but I think you're right. I think this it doesn't feel like a Western, so it gets, I think, unfairly categorized as like not a Western, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I still enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to, because here I am thinking that this is going to be just an adventure movie, and it's not. It has elements of being an adventure movie, but it just subverted my expectations in such a
Mhm.
positive way. And I appreciate the fact that this had something else to say beyond, the ends justify the means to get this gold.
Mhm.
And like, I love what Howard said at the end is like, hey, we gotta put this mountain back better than what we found it.
Yeah.
A lot of great things to say about, just nature and all that stuff too. So I did appreciate that part too.
It definitely feels like one of those kinds of conflicts of there's a rich depth to the conflict from a like a moral standpoint, because like this is what Howard does. And Walter Houston really imbues this character with a lot of emotion and care. And
Mhm.
it's that care for the mountains, care for the land that like there's none of that in Dobbs. He's so
No.
self-centered. And it's just that kind of conflict just really stands out in this film. And this film has great character work, great performances, great direction, and it has a thrilling story that puts you on edge, has some twists along the way. It really does a lot.
Yeah, and it I was never bored watching
Mm,
this. It was always at least captivating or exciting to me. I can't speak for other people who would probably find this a little boring at times, but I was riveted the whole time. I was not anticipating that as well because I don't watch a lot of older movies, and
mhm.
I should, because kind of reviewing the history of film and where we came from is always a good thing. So yeah, and it's this was definitely one that is going to be up there for me as one that I would definitely be recommending other people to check out, because yeah, you're right. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this that often. I don't hear a lot of people, because I used to own the movie of this because I thought it was an iconic movie, and it was one that I was like, I'll get around to watching it eventually. And one day it was between this or the bridge over the river Kwai, or bridge on the River Kwai, and I was like, I'll watch that. And I was like, wow, that was also not quite what I was expecting it to be, and that's okay. But yeah, that's always
Oh,
fun.
that's definitely that's one that I absolutely love, Bridge on the River Kwai. But if you are interested in really taking a dive into film history, where three guys' passion for film takes you through the history of film, you should check out the Cinematic Wasteland here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. Shameless plugs
Synergy,
all around.
synergy.
Synergy. And yep, there's our little ad in between our next, which is 1941's The Maltese Falcon, also directed by John Huston, starring Humphrey Bogart, Mary Astor, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet. There is Elisha Cook Jr., and there's even a Ward Bond sighting. I haven't
Oh.
had a Ward Bond sighting since I was done all of my John Ford movies. So, which also, honestly, Ward Bond became one of my favorite character actors because of all those John Ford movies. So, but here we have an OG film noir. This is like this is the prototype for film noir. San Francisco private detective Jamspade takes on a case that involves him with three eccentric criminals, a gorgeous liar, and their quest for a priceless statuette, with the stakes rising after his partner is murdered. It has it all, Mike. But what are your thoughts on the Maltese Falcon?
So the first time I saw this was for a film and lit class in college, and we
Oh,
were talking about film noir. And guess what? This is the first movie we watched, because, and the first book that we read, because, well, yeah,
I'm in the middle of reading the Maltese Falcon,
it
which is
is,
interesting.
the book is pretty, it's not like very different, but it's different enough that it's
Mm,
like, oh, this is interesting to at least read this, and it's not like a shot for shot remake. To me, The Maltese Falcon is one of my favorite Bogart movies because
mm.
Sam Spade is just such a fascinating character.
Yeah.
And just whenever I think of a private detective, I always think of Sam Spade. And it's not because his detective skills are particularly very good, because they're fine. It's
He
that
knows
voice.
people.
He knows people. It's that voice. And
Mhm,
just it's so iconic.
mhm.
And it's interesting because this and the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, it also deals with that concept of greed and what it would do to people. So look at that. Triple play. We got greed, we got John Huston, and we got Humphrey Bogart.
There we go. And this one has a MacGuffin,
Of course it has a MacGuffin.
a very specific MacGuffin, as in the titular Maltese Falcon.
And
This film is this hits on so many levels in terms of noir. And I think one of the most important things to point out is John Huston's direction, making a film that literally is just people talking the whole entire movie, basically. And even to the point where they don't really show you the action. You always find out about somebody being murdered. You find out about somebody all through dialogue. And it's very like this could easily felt like a play, but
Mhm.
there's like a claustrophobic feeling to this. There's like a suspense to it, and that level, I think Houston does a great job of really capturing this film and its setting in an impactful way. And then you have Bogart, who does indeed embody Sam Spade so perfectly. You have somebody like Mary Astor, who's Bridget O'Shaughnessy, this femme fatale.
Just so good. So
Mhm.
good. What a great performance from her. It's God.
Well, and even like that whole entire point towards the end where Bogart's like, just tell me the truth. And it's just like he's like, I know you've been lying, and she's like, can't even help herself, but try
Mhm.
to lie and just wiggle her way through this whole entire situation. And these three criminals are very interesting, each in their own right, because you have Peter Lorre, who's just like as Joel Cairo, who's just this tiny man, but he's a little unhinged, he's a little uneasy, and he might snap at a moment. And I love where he like gets aggressive with Sam Spade, and he's just like toying with Cairo right back. Just the attitude and the confidence that Sam Spade has. One of my favorite things about this film is that Sidney Greenstreet was the blueprint for one of the most iconic Marvel villains ever, and that is the Kingpin.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. That would be a thing.
Casper Gutman is indeed like the blueprint for Wilson Fisk.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And, this 300-pound man in the suit, the bald head, just all of it. And Sidney Greenstreet does such a great job of just imbuing this air about him, where even like when they feel deterred, it's just like, now on to the next thing, on to the next part of the adventure.
Mhm.
And he just has that vibe. And then Elijah Cook Jr. is so intense. He's scary. Like you don't want to mess with this. You don't want to mess with Wilmer Cook.
No.
He looks like he's on edge and is ready to shoot anybody any given moment. But of course, like I mentioned, Ward Bond as detective, whole house. Just he's just such a great little presence to be in this film. But I think one of the biggest things that sells this is the cast. The cast is fantastic for sure.
The cast and just I would say the script and the dialogue are just
Mhm.
all really great because I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective, but it's totally true about how there isn't a lot going on action wise in this. It is very heavily dialogue heavy, very heavily
Yep.
dialogue centric. And I really enjoyed that because it could still keep you on the edge of your seat the whole time. Even though maybe this is a bit of a weird opinion, but I'm just gonna say it. This statue doesn't even seem fucking worth it. Like it's tiny as hell. It's like, really? We're going through all this
It's supposed to be
for
made of gold.
okay, that's fine. It looks
I like
plastic as shit, but
gold. Well, we don't want to spoil anything, but
yeah,
things don't necessarily turn out as they might appear in this
no.
movie, and that's what gives it some. And that's the thing. This film is full of mystery, full of twists. Who's playing who? It just works so well. But no, like why do we want the Maltese Falcon? It's made of what dreams are made of.
What dreams are made of. That's another one of those lines
Yeah.
that you're like, "Oh, that's where this came from." And
Yep.
even though it's a pretty generic line, but it
It
perfectly
wasn't back in
encapsulates
1941.
it perfectly encapsulates what this falcon represents to everybody. And it's just a ticket to a better life and what people will do in order to get that is pretty despicable, but there it is. You have all these people who are just greedy and that's all they want and they'll do whatever they can in order to get that to like
Yep.
even Sam at some points you're just
He's a dangerous dude too.
are you legit like a good person? And it's kind of up in the air because
Yeah.
you could make an argument that Sam is doing all of this to just infiltrate these groups and try to get information. You could make an argument that I don't know, he's kind of Denzel Washington in Training Day. It's like, oh, the ends justify the means. It's all good. I get mine.
There's definitely some layers to this.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him such a great noir protagonist, because he's not somebody who's so easily likable. And he just has that look and the demeanor where he's just like, can we trust you? You're our protagonist, but can we trust you in this situation? But this is an all-time classic. It's so well directed. It overcomes its potential limitations in terms of location, and it has like this web of lies and deceit. It has great characters, even like great character designs and casting to really sell these characters in the way that they are. But this is one of those films that lives on because this really set the blueprint for so many films after it.
Yeah, for sure. And also read the book. The book's pretty great. So yeah, I'll give a plug to the book because I very much enjoyed it. It's a great mystery.
There we go. But Mike, thank you so much for coming on and chatting this double dose of Bogart, Houston, greed infused films.
Absolutely. Glad to be on. Glad to talk Humphrey Bogart. Any opportunity to encourage more people to watch bogey stuff, I will be there for it.
There you go. But thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What are some of your favorite Bogart films? What are your favorite some John Huston films? What are some of your favorite films that really deal with the greed of the world? And why is it There Will Be Blood? That's certainly one of mine. But make sure to like, also to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. A lot of great shows here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network, a wide range of different topics, and some new stuff on the horizon for sure. And if you like our logo, make sure to go check out HiFlyer Creative for all your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Retrospective here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.